The country club's grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers as I approached the head table at my daughter Sarah's wedding reception. Marcus, her new husband, smiled warmly and pulled out a chair for me. Just as my knees bent and I began lowering myself down, he yanked the chair away. I crashed hard onto the polished floor. "Your place is on the floor," he announced loudly. Laughter erupted from the guests as I struggled to comprehend what had happened. Harold Wellington III, the groom's father, stood abruptly, his face draining of color. "Sir, is that you?" The laughter died instantly as Harold Wellington rushed around the table, his expensive Italian shoes clicking against the marble floor. His hands trembled as he helped me to my feet, and I noticed tears forming in his eyes. My hip throbbed from the impact, but I was more confused by his reaction than hurt by the fall. "Barnaby Thompson." Harold's voice cracked with emotion. He turned to face the 300 wedding guests, his commanding presence silencing even the whispered conversations at the back tables. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed my son assault the man who saved my life, my family, and my entire business empire." Marcus's triumphant smirk melted into confusion. "Dad, what are you talking about? This is just Sarah's father. He's nobody special." Harold's eyes flashed with anger I'd never seen before. "Nobody special? This man is the reason you grew up in a mansion instead of a trailer park. He's the reason you attended private schools instead of begging on street corners with me." The wedding coordinator fumbled with her clipboard, unsure whether to signal the band to play or call security. Sarah stood frozen at the head table, her wedding dress rustling as she gripped the edge for support. Her eyes darted between her new husband and me, searching for answers. Harold pulled a leather portfolio from his jacket, his hands still shaking. 30 years ago, I was nobody. A failed inventor with a patent dispute that would have destroyed me. Barnaby Thompson was the lead aerospace engineer at Titan Defense Systems. My competitor had bribed 3 witnesses to testify that I'd stolen their designs. Barnaby was the 4th witness, the one with the most credibility. He opened the portfolio, revealing yellowed newspaper clippings and legal documents. They offered him $200,000 to lie. That was serious money in 1994. But Barnaby refused. More than that, he testified on my behalf, providing technical evidence that my designs were original. He didn't know me. I'd never met him before the trial. He simply believed in the truth. The room remained silent, except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning. Even the catering staff had stopped moving silver trays, balanced in their hands as they listened. Because of his testimony, I won the case. That patent became the foundation of Wellington Industries. Every smartphone you hold, every computer you use has components based on technology I developed, because this man gave me the chance to prove my innocence. Harold pulled out another document, this one, bearing the seal of a major law firm. "I've spent 20 years trying to find you, Barnaby. You left Titan Defense shortly after the trial, and you seemed to vanish. I hired investigators, placed ads in engineering journals, even created a scholarship in your name, hoping you'd surface." He held up the document for everyone to see. "This is a trust fund I established 15 years ago. $50 million waiting for the day I could finally repay my debt to Barnaby Thompson. It's been sitting there gathering interest now, worth over $78 million. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. I heard champagne glasses hitting the floor, the crystals shattering like my understanding of this moment. Marcus had gone pale, his mouth opening and closing without sound, looking remarkably like a fish pulled from water. "Dad," Marcus finally managed to stammer, "you can't be serious. $50 million. For testimony in some old court case." Harold's expression hardened further. "That old court case built everything you've taken for granted your entire spoiled life. The cars you crashed in high school, the yacht you party on every summer, the trust fund you've been living off since college, all of it exists because this man chose integrity over easy money." Sarah finally found her voice. "Daddy, is this true? You never mentioned knowing the Wellingtons before." I cleared my throat, still processing Harold's revelation. The pain in my hip seemed distant, now overshadowed by the surreal turn of events. I didn't know, sweetheart. After your mother got sick, we moved to be closer to her doctors. I left the defense industry to spend more time with family. I never followed up on what happened with Harold's company. Which makes your character even more remarkable, Harold interjected. You helped a stranger and never sought recognition or reward. He turned back to Marcus, his disappointment palpable. And you, my son, just publicly humiliated him. Made him fall. Declared his place was on the floor. The irony is sickening. Marcus attempted to salvage the situation, his salesman's instincts kicking in. It was just a joke, Dad. Wedding pranks, you know. Barnaby understands, don't you? He looked at me with desperate eyes, all traces of his earlier cruelty, replaced by naked fear. I studied my new son-in-law carefully. The designer tuxedo, the perfect hair, the whitened teeth, all of it suddenly seemed like a costume, hiding something darker. A joke involves laughter shared by everyone, including the target. What you did was deliberate humiliation. Harold nodded grimly. Apologize, now, properly. Dad, come on, this is my wedding reception, Marcus protested. Which makes your behavior even more appalling. Apologize, or I'll have security escort you out of your own reception. The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Sarah looked stricken, her carefully applied makeup beginning to run as tears escaped. The wedding photographer lowered his camera, clearly unsure whether to document this disaster or pretend it wasn't happening. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he faced me. I apologize for pulling the chair away. It was inappropriate. That's not an apology, Harold snapped. That's a press release. Try again. The guests watched like spectators at a gladiatorial contest. Some held up phones, undoubtedly recording every second. Tomorrow this would be viral on social media, but I couldn't bring myself to care about that now. Marcus took a deep breath. Barnaby, I mean Mr. Thompson. I'm deeply sorry for what I did. It was cruel, disrespectful, and unforgivable. I humiliated you in front of everyone on what should be a day of joy. I'm ashamed of my behavior. The words sounded rehearsed, like lines from a play he didn't understand. But what struck me most was Sarah's expression as she watched her new husband. Something had shifted in her eyes, a recognition, perhaps, of seeing someone clearly for the first time. Harold reached into his jacket again, producing an elegant business card. Barnaby, this has my personal contact information, not the office number, my private line. We need to meet this week to arrange the transfer of your trust fund. My lawyers will handle everything. I accepted the card, noting the weight of the expensive paper, the embossed lettering. Such a small thing to represent such a massive change. Harold, I appreciate the gesture, but I never expected any reward. I simply told the truth. Which is exactly why you deserve everything and more. Harold's voice carried the weight of 3 decades of gratitude. My son's behavior today only reinforces how rare integrity has become. The wedding coordinator finally found her courage, approaching our group tentatively. Should we proceed with the dinner service? Harold looked at me, deferring to my wishes. The power dynamic in the room had shifted completely. The man who'd been knocked to the floor moments ago now held the attention and respect of everyone present. Let's continue with the reception, I said quietly. This is still my daughter's wedding day. As the catering staff resumed their duties and the band began playing soft jazz, I noticed Marcus whispering urgently to Sarah. Her face remained troubled, and she kept glancing my way with an expression I couldn't quite read. The seed of something had been planted in this moment, something that would grow in ways none of us could yet imagine. Harold personally escorted me to a chair, checking twice that it was secure before allowing me to sit. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. As the salad course was served, I slipped the business card into my jacket pocket, feeling the weight of more than just paper settling there. The wedding reception continued, but the celebration felt hollow now, like a play where all the actors had forgotten their lines. I watched my daughter radiant in her designer gown and wondered what thoughts raced behind her carefully maintained smile. Marcus played the role of attentive groom, but his movements seemed mechanical, his charm forced. What had started as a moment of cruelty had transformed into something else entirely. As I sat at that head table, surrounded by crystal and silver and the facade of perfection, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The real story, I sensed, was yet to unfold. 3 days had passed since the wedding reception disaster. I was nursing my morning coffee, still processing Harold Wellington's revelation, when my phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, but the voice that greeted me was barely recognizable through the sobbing. "Daddy, can you come over? Please, I need you." The words came in gasps, each syllable fighting through tears. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? Where are you?" "I'm at Emma's apartment. Marcus doesn't know I'm here. Please, Daddy, I can't do this over the phone." 20 minutes later, I stood outside Emma Chen's downtown high-rise, my heart racing with paternal concern. Emma had been Sarah's roommate at Northwestern, a corporate lawyer who'd never quite warmed to Marcus. She answered the door with grim satisfaction, mixed with sympathy. "She's in the living room, Mr. Thompson. I'll give you privacy, but I'll be in my office if you need anything." Sarah sat curled on the sofa, still wearing what looked like yesterday's clothes. Her honeymoon luggage sat untouched by the door. The Mediterranean cruise they'd planned would have to sail without them. "Oh, Daddy," she whispered, as I settled beside her, immediately burying her face against my shoulder, like she had as a child when thunder frightened her. "Everything's a lie. Our entire relationship, the wedding, all of it." I held her close, feeling her body shake with each sob. "Tell me what happened, sweetheart. Start from the beginning." She pulled back, wiping her eyes with a tissue that had seen better days. After the reception, Marcus was frantic. He kept pacing our hotel suite, making phone calls, checking his laptop. He wouldn't talk to me, just kept saying he needed to think. Finally, around 3 in the morning, he went to shower. Sarah's voice steadied as anger began mixing with her hurt. He left his phone on the nightstand. It kept buzzing with messages. "I know I shouldn't have looked, but after what happened at the reception, after seeing how he treated you, I had to know who he really was." She pulled out her own phone, hands trembling as she opened her photos. "I took screenshots of everything before he came out. Look at this." The message thread was with someone named Jessica. My stomach turned as I read their exchange. "Did the old fool fall for it?" Jessica had written. "Perfectly. Should have seen his face when he hit the floor. Sarah's eating out of my hand, worried about her poor daddy. Good. We need her isolated from him. Once she's cut off from family, you can start the financial manipulation. How much do you think he's really worth?" "His patents must be worth millions. Sarah mentioned he designed guidance systems for military contracts. Those aerospace engineers are all secret millionaires. He lives modestly to avoid taxes." 3 months max, then. You file for divorce. California's community property laws will get you half of whatever she inherits. I can't wait to be done playing the supportive mistress and finally be together for real. "Soon, baby. Just keep the pressure on. The old man's pride will make him cut her off eventually, then she'll sign anything I put in front of her." I read the messages twice, my coffee-deprived brain struggling to process the calculated cruelty. "Sarah, I'm so sorry." "There's more," she said, swiping to another screenshot. "I found his search history. He's been researching your patents for months, Daddy. Every article about your work at Titan Defense. Every public record about our family's finances. He even hired someone to do a background check on you." She showed me search after search. Barnaby Thompson, net worth aerospace engineer patent values. Military contractor retirement packages. How to value intellectual property in divorce. But the worst part, Sarah's voice cracked again, is this email to Jessica from 8 months ago, right after he proposed. She handed me her phone with shaking hands. The email was a detailed plan. Marcus had researched widowers with unmarried daughters, specifically targeting women in their 30s who might be feeling pressure about marriage. He'd found Sarah through her LinkedIn profile, noting her connection to me and my engineering background. The proposal timeline, the romantic gestures, even the specific restaurant where he'd proposed, had been planned to manipulate her emotions. Phase 1 courtship. Target responds well to intellectual conversation and classic romance. Avoid physical pressure, build emotional dependency instead. Phase 2. Isolation. Create small conflicts with father, nothing dramatic enough to cause suspicion. Build narrative of father being controlling or jealous of relationship. Phase 3. Marriage. Destination wedding preferred to limit father's influence on proceedings. Phase 4. Discovery. Engineer scenario where wife discovers father's hidden wealth. Act surprised and supportive. Phase 5. Manipulation. Gradually introduce financial stress, gambling problems, or business failures. Wife will either ask father for help revealing asset locations or agree to legal action against father for withholding inheritance. Phase 6. Exit. File for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Community property ensures 50% of all marital assets, including any inheritance or gifts from father. I set the phone down, my hands surprisingly steady, despite the rage building in my chest. My little girl had been targeted, hunted like prey by a predator who saw her only as a pathway to imagined wealth. When I confronted him, Sarah continued, he didn't even try to deny it. He laughed, Daddy. Actually laughed. Said I was naive to think anyone would marry a woman in her 30s without an ulterior motive. That love was just a word poor people use to justify bad decisions. What did you do? I packed a bag and left. Came straight here. Emma's been trying to get me to see a lawyer, but I just feel so stupid. How did I fall for this? How did I not see what he really was? I pulled her close again, my own anger temporarily set aside by the need to comfort my daughter. Con artists succeed because they're experts at manipulation, sweetheart. They study their targets, mirror what they want to see. You fell in love with an illusion he carefully crafted. That's not stupidity, that's human nature. But you saw through him immediately. The way you looked at him after he pulled that chair stunt, you knew something was wrong. I thought back to that moment, the calculated cruelty in his eyes as I fell. Sometimes it takes the extreme gesture to reveal someone's true nature. He couldn't resist humiliating me publicly. His mask slipped. Emma emerged from her office, carrying a fresh box of tissues and a legal pad. Sorry to interrupt, but Sarah, we need to discuss next steps. California has very specific laws about annulment versus divorce, and the sooner we act, the better. I found out something else, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. Marcus isn't even his real name. Well, legally it is now, but he was born Marcus Peterson. He changed it after Harold's ex-wife adopted him during their brief marriage. He's been trading on the Wellington name for years. This revelation sparked something in my mind. If Marcus was running a long-term con, there would be patterns, previous victims. But I kept my thoughts to myself, not wanting to overwhelm Sarah with my suspicions. The trust fund Harold mentioned, Sarah said suddenly. Marcus was texting someone about it all night. He's convinced you're going to give it all to me as a wedding gift. He's already planning how to spend it. Sweetheart, I need you to listen carefully. I said, choosing my words with precision. You're going to stay here with Emma for now. Don't answer Marcus's calls or texts. Let Emma handle all communication through lawyers. Can you do that? She nodded, looking relieved to have clear instructions. What are you going to do? What I do best, I replied, thinking of my engineering background. Solve problems systematically. But first, we need to ensure you're safe and protected legally. Emma had already started making notes. I can file emergency paperwork today. Request a restraining order if needed. My colleague specializes in family law with a focus on financial fraud in marriages. As I prepared to leave, Sarah grabbed my hand. Daddy, the money Harold wants to give you, maybe it's better if Marcus never knows about it. If he thinks you're just a retired engineer living on a pension, maybe he'll leave us alone." I smiled at my daughter's growing wisdom. "That's very perceptive, sweetheart. Let Marcus believe whatever he wants to believe. Reality has a way of catching up with people who live in fantasy worlds." Walking back to my car, I pulled out Harold Wellington's business card. It was time to have a conversation about his adopted son. But first, I had another call to make. My old Air Force buddy William Sterling had retired from law to become a private investigator. If Marcus Peterson had done this before, William would find out. The game Marcus had started at that wedding reception was far from over. He'd knocked me down literally and figuratively, in front of everyone I cared about. But as my late wife, Margaret, used to say, it's not the fall that defines you. It's how you choose to get back up. I sat in my car outside Emma's building, watching the city wake up around me. Somewhere in this metropolis, Marcus was probably spinning new lies, weaving new plots confident in his superiority. He had no idea that the old fool he'd humiliated was about to become his worst nightmare. Not through violence or threats, but through the patient, methodical approach of an engineer who'd spent his career solving complex problems. The investigation would begin today. And unlike Marcus's rushed, greed-driven schemes, my response would be thorough, legal, and devastating. He wanted to play games with my family. He was about to learn that some games have consequences he never imagined. William Sterling's office occupied the 10th floor of a building that had seen better decades. The worn carpet and flickering fluorescent lights didn't inspire confidence, but I knew better than to judge by appearances. William ran his private investigation firm with the same precision he'd once applied to military intelligence. Barnaby Thompson. He grinned, rising from behind a desk cluttered with files and computer monitors. "Haven't seen you since Margaret's funeral. How long has it been? 4 years?" 4.5, I corrected, accepting his firm handshake. "I appreciate you seeing me on short notice, William." "Your call intrigued me. Coffee." As he poured from a pot that looked older than his carpet, I laid out everything: the wedding incident, Harold's revelation, Sarah's discovery of Marcus's deception. William's expression grew progressively darker as I showed him the screenshots Sarah had sent to my phone. "Marcus Wellington, formerly Peterson." William muttered, already typing on one of his keyboards. "Let me run some preliminary checks while you're here." His fingers flew across the keys with surprising agility for a man in his late 60s. Screens filled with data documents and photographs. Within minutes, he'd pulled up more information than I'd expected. "Well, this is interesting." William leaned back, whistling low. "Your son-in-law has quite a history. 3 previous marriages, all ending in divorce within 18 months. All 3 wives were daughters of men with technical or engineering backgrounds." He swiveled a monitor toward me. "Marriage number 1, Jennifer Hawkins, daughter of Robert Hawkins, software engineer, who held several patents. Married June 2015, divorced October 2016. She alleged financial abuse and fraud, but dropped the charges." Another click brought up a second file. "Marriage number 2, Diana Chen, daughter of James Chen, biomedical engineer. Married March 2017, divorced July 2018. Similar pattern claims of financial manipulation. Charges dropped after settlement." And the third, I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "Patricia Morrison, daughter of Frank Morrison, chemical engineer with DuPont. Married January 2020, divorced April 2021. This one's different, though. Frank Morrison fought back. He hired a forensic accountant, documented everything. Marcus settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. Can we contact Frank Morrison? William smiled. Already sent him a message. Frank's retired, now lives in Scottsdale. Based on his response time to my investigator network posts, he's been waiting for someone else to come forward about Marcus. My phone buzzed. Harold Wellington's name appeared on the screen. I need to take this. I apologized to William. Harold's voice was strained. Barnaby, can we meet today? I've discovered some disturbing information about Marcus that you need to know. I'm actually with a private investigator right now, looking into your son's background." A long pause. "He's not my son. Not biologically, and after yesterday, not in any way that matters." "Where are you?" "I'll come to you." 20 minutes later, Harold entered William's office, carrying a banker's box full of documents. His usual executive presence seemed diminished, replaced by a man confronting ugly truths about someone he'd trusted. I had my security team pull Marcus's employment records from all Wellington Industries subsidiaries. Harold began without preamble. "He's been using his position as my son to run side businesses I knew nothing about. Investment consulting, financial planning, all targeting elderly engineers and their families." William's eyes sharpened. "Do you have client lists?" Harold handed over a folder. 17 clients over the past 3 years. All of them lost money in investments that Marcus recommended. The amounts range from $50,000 to $500,000 each. "Why didn't any of them report this?" I asked. "Because he's clever," Harold replied bitterly. The investments were technically legitimate, just extremely high risk with Marcus taking massive commissions. When they failed, it looked like bad market timing rather than fraud. Plus, he chose his victims carefully. Older men too proud to admit they'd been swindled, especially by someone they thought was Wellington's son. William had been typing throughout Harold's explanation. "I'm seeing a pattern in his victim selection. All widowers or divorced men with daughters aged 28 to 35. All with technical backgrounds suggesting hidden wealth but modest lifestyles." My phone rang. Frank Morrison's name appeared on the caller ID William had forwarded. I put it on speaker with everyone's permission. "Mr. Thompson, William Sterling gave me your number. I understand Marcus Peterson got his hooks into your daughter, too." Frank's voice carried the weight of old anger. "That bastard nearly destroyed my Patricia. She attempted suicide after their divorce. Blamed herself for not seeing through him." "I'm sorry to hear that, Frank. How is she now?" "Better. Remarried to a good man, has 2 kids. But it took years of therapy. Marcus doesn't just steal money, he steals confident self-worth. He makes his victims feel stupid for trusting him." "Would you be willing to share your documentation?" William asked. "I'll do better than that. I've been in contact with 6 other fathers whose daughters Marcus targeted. We've been building a case waiting for enough evidence to take to the FBI. Your situation might be the tipping point." Harold had gone pale during this conversation. "FBI. This is a federal matter." Frank's laugh was bitter. "Wire fraud across state lines, tax evasion, identity theft, using the Wellington name without authorization. Oh yes, this is federal. The question is whether you're willing to let your family name be dragged through it." Harold's answer came without hesitation. "My real son died in Afghanistan, serving his country. This parasite who stole his place, drag him through whatever mud necessary." After Frank hung up, William pulled up additional screens. "There's more. Marcus has significant gambling debts. Not to legitimate casinos, but to some very dangerous people. Vincent Torino, ring any bells?" Harold groaned. "Torino owns several private gaming clubs that cater to high-stakes players. They're technically legal, but barely. Why would Marcus get involved with him? Because legitimate casinos cut him off 2 years ago." William explained, showing us documentation. "He owes Torino approximately $2.3 million. The interest alone is crushing him." "That explains the urgency of targeting Sarah," I mused. "He's running out of time and options." William nodded. "Torino's not known for his patience. Word is, he's given Marcus until the end of the year to pay up. It's October now." "So Marcus saw my wedding gift to Sarah as his lifeline," Harold said. "When you mentioned the trust fund at the reception, he must have thought he'd hit the jackpot." My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Marcus showed up at Emma's building. Security wouldn't let him up, but he's screaming in the lobby about his rights as my husband. Emma's calling the police." "I need to go," I said, standing quickly. "Wait." William commanded. "This is exactly what he wants. You show up, he creates a scene, makes you look like the controlling father he's painted you as. Let the police handle it. Trust your daughter and her lawyer." He was right, but every paternal instinct screamed at me to protect Sarah. I forced myself to sit back down. Harold pulled out his phone. "Emma Chen, you said I'll call building security. Wellington Industries has contracts with their parent company. They'll ensure Marcus is properly removed." As Harold made his call, William showed me more of his findings. Marcus has been texting someone named Jessica constantly. Based on cell tower data and social media cross-referencing, Jessica Martinez is a bartender at Torino's main club. She's been feeding him information about other marks, helping identify vulnerable targets. "So she's not just a mistress," I observed. "She's an accomplice." "Exactly. Which makes this a conspiracy charge on top of everything else." William's smile was predatory. "The FBI loves conspiracy cases. Multiple defendants mean multiple opportunities for someone to flip." Harold finished his call. "Marcus has been escorted off the premises. Emma Chen is filing for an emergency restraining order as we speak." A notification popped up on William's screen. "Frank Morrison just sent his files. Good Lord, there's enough here to bury Marcus." He scrolled through document after document. Financial records, recorded conversations, even a confession Marcus made to Patricia while drunk, admitting he targeted her for her father's money. "Can we use that recording?" I asked. "Arizona's a one-party consent state for recordings. Patricia recorded it legally. It's admissible." Harold stood abruptly. "I need to contact my lawyers. If Marcus has been using the Wellington name for fraud, I need to protect my company." He paused at the door. "Barnaby, whatever you need for this investigation, money, resources, connections, it's yours. That piece of trash humiliated you under my family's name. I take that personally." After Harold left, William and I spent 3 more hours building a comprehensive profile of Marcus Peterson. Each new discovery painted a darker picture. He'd been running cons since college, starting with fellow students from wealthy families. He'd refined his techniques over 15 years, learning to exploit emotional vulnerabilities as effectively as financial ones. "Here's what puzzles me," William said finally. "He's smart enough to run these elaborate schemes, charming enough to fool intelligent women and their families. Why not just use those skills legitimately?" Because he enjoys the con, I realized. It's not just about money. It's about proving he's smarter than everyone else. The chair prank at the wedding, that wasn't necessary for his plan. He did it because he couldn't resist showing his superiority. "Pride goeth before a fall," William quoted. "And I have a feeling Marcus's fall is going to be spectacular. So what's our next move?" I considered carefully. We keep building the case, but quietly. Let Marcus think he's still in control. Meanwhile, we coordinate with Frank Morrison and the other fathers. If the FBI is interested, we want to present them with an airtight case. And the gambling debts, Torino's not going to wait for the legal system. An idea began forming. What if Torino became part of the solution instead of a problem? If he knew Marcus was lying about his ability to pay, that he'd been scammed too? William's grin widened. "I like how you think. Torino's technically legitimate. If he cooperated with authorities, provided evidence of Marcus's fraud. Everyone wins except Marcus," I finished. As I prepared to leave, William handed me a flash drive. "Everything we've found so far. Make backups, keep them secure. And Barnaby, watch your back. Desperate men do desperate things, and Marcus is running out of options." Driving home, I felt the weight of what we'd uncovered. Marcus wasn't just a gold digger or opportunist. He was a serial predator who'd destroyed multiple families for profit and pleasure. But he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd chosen the wrong family this time. Sarah was safe with Emma. Harold was protecting his business interests. The other victims were ready to testify. The FBI would soon be involved. The trap was being set, piece by careful piece. Marcus thought he'd knocked down a weak old man at that wedding. He was about to learn that some old men had spent decades learning patience strategy and the value of thorough preparation. The game was far from over, but I was beginning to see how it would end. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, I invited Marcus to dinner at my house. The call had been carefully scripted with William's help, every word designed to sound like a father reluctantly trying to reconcile for his daughter's sake. "Sarah's miserable," I'd told him over the phone, letting exhaustion creep into my voice. "Maybe we can work this out like adults. Just you and me, no lawyers." Marcus had agreed instantly, his voice dripping with false humility. "I appreciate this, Barnaby. I know things got off to a rough start, but I love your daughter." Now, as I prepared dinner in my modest kitchen, I checked the hidden cameras William's team had installed. Every angle was covered, all audio crystal clear. The fake financial documents were positioned perfectly in my home office, just visible enough from the hallway to catch Marcus's attention. The doorbell rang at exactly 7. Marcus stood on my porch, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, holding an expensive bottle of wine like a peace offering. "Barnaby," he said, flashing that salesman's smile. "Thank you for this opportunity." I accepted the wine without commenting on the label he'd made sure to display prominently. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." As we walked through the house, I watched his eyes catalog everything. The modest furniture, the older appliances, the lack of obvious wealth. He was already calculating, already dismissing me as the simple retiree he'd imagined. "Perfect." "Sarah's not coming?" he asked, failing to hide his disappointment. "I thought it best we talk first, man to man." Over dinner, Marcus performed beautifully. He apologized again for the wedding incident, spoke lovingly of Sarah, promised to be a better husband. Every word was calculated to appeal to a father's desire to see his daughter happy. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have been moved. "I need to use your restroom," Marcus announced, after we'd finished eating right on schedule. People were so predictable when they thought they were being clever. I gestured down the hall, knowing he'd have to pass my office. "Second door on the right." Through the hidden camera feed on my phone, I watched him pause at the office doorway. His head swiveled, checking if I was watching. Then he slipped inside. The documents were irresistible bank statements, showing offshore accounts, patent valuations, investment portfolios, all masterfully forged by one of William's contacts. The crown jewel was a letter from a Swiss bank regarding a numbered account worth $100 million, partially visible under other papers. Marcus's hands shook as he photographed everything with his phone. When he returned to the dining room, his entire demeanor had changed. Gone was the apologetic son-in-law. In his place sat a man who thought he'd just discovered buried treasure. "More wine?" I offered, playing the oblivious host. "Please." His smile was genuine now, the smile of a predator who'd spotted easy prey. "Barnaby, I have to say you've done well for yourself. This house might be modest, but there's something to be said for not flaunting wealth." "My Margaret always preferred the simple life," I replied, letting sadness color my voice. "Never saw the point of showing off." "Wise woman. Though I hope you don't mind me saying you should enjoy your success more. You've earned it." I shrugged, portraying the frugal engineer perfectly. "What would I do with fancy things? I've got everything I need." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "What about Sarah? Surely you want to ensure she's taken care of?" "Of course. That's every father's responsibility." "Have you thought about estate planning? I know it's not pleasant to consider, but with your assets, it's important to have everything properly structured." There it was, the first probe. "I've got a will. Everything goes to Sarah when I pass." "But what about protecting those assets? Now, tax shelters, trust funds, there are so many ways to ensure the government doesn't take half of what you've built." I pretended to consider this. "I suppose you know about such things, being in finance." "It's literally my specialty." Marcus lied smoothly. "I'd be happy to review your portfolio, just to ensure Sarah's inheritance is protected. After all, we're family now." "That's kind of you to offer. Let me think about it." Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw his expression tighten. "Excuse me, I need to take this." He stepped onto my back porch, but through the window I could see him gesticulating angrily. When he returned, his facade had cracked slightly. "Everything okay?" I asked with grandfatherly concern. "Just business. Nothing important." But sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool evening. Torino's people, no doubt reminding him of deadlines. "Marcus," I said suddenly, as if the thought had just occurred to me. "Sarah mentioned you've been having some financial difficulties. Is there anything I can do to help?" His eyes widened at the opening. "Oh, it's nothing serious. Just some investments that didn't pan out as expected. The market's been volatile." "How much are we talking about?" "It's really not your concern. You're married to my daughter. Your problems are her problems." I let worry creep into my voice. "How much, Marcus?" He hesitated clearly, debating how much to reveal. "About $2 million, but I have deals in the pipeline that will cover it." $2 million. I whistled low. "That's significant. Who do you owe?" "Private investors. They're understanding about these things." Vincent Torino doesn't strike me as the understanding type. Marcus went rigid. "How do you know about Torino?" I smiled sadly. "I may be old, but I'm not naive. You think I'd let my daughter marry someone without doing basic research? I know about the gambling debts, Marcus." You knew." His voice cracked slightly. "I hoped you'd overcome it. Everyone deserves a second chance, but now you're dragging Sarah into it." "I would never let anything happen to Sarah." "Wouldn't you?" What happens when Torino gets tired of waiting? When he decides to use her as leverage? Marcus's mask finally slipped completely. "I'll handle it. I just need time." "How much time do you have?" "Until December 31st, 10 weeks. I stood pacing to the window as if deep in thought. "What if I could help?" "You'd do that." Hope blazed in his eyes. "Not for you. For Sarah. I won't have my daughter living in fear because of your mistakes." I turned to face him. "But there would be conditions." "Anything, whatever you want. First, complete honesty. No more lies, no more schemes. Second, you sign a post-nuptial agreement protecting Sarah's assets from your debts. Third, you get treatment for the gambling." Marcus nodded eagerly. "Yes, of course, all of that." "And fourth," I continued, "you give me full access to your financial records. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with." "My records. How else can I help? I need to see the full picture. Every debt, every asset, every transaction." He hesitated clearly, uncomfortable with transparency. But the thought of my millions overcame his reluctance. "Okay, I'll get you everything." "Good. Bring it all here Thursday evening. And Marcus, if I find out you've hidden anything, our deal is off." After he left, I called William. He took the bait. Every document photographed. "Beautiful. And the financial records request?" He agreed. He's desperate enough to bare his soul for a chance at my imaginary fortune. Speaking of which, William's voice carried amusement. "I have news. Remember Jessica, the bartender mistress? She's not just a bartender." "What do you mean?" "Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI, undercover for 2 years investigating Torino's operations. She made contact today. Marcus has been her secondary target, helping her build a case for wire fraud and money laundering." I sank into my chair, stunned. The FBI's been watching him this whole time. They were building a broader case against Torino's network. Marcus is just one piece, but an important one. He's been washing money through fake investments. Agent Walsh has recordings, documents, the works. So when he brings me his financial records, we hand them straight to the FBI, completing their chain of evidence. They're planning a coordinated arrest operation. Multiple targets, multiple agencies. Marcus walking into your trap accelerates their timeline. What about Sarah? How do we protect her from the fallout? Agent Walsh assures me spouses who cooperate fully receive consideration. Sarah's clearly a victim, not a participant. The post-nuptial agreement you demanded will further distance her from his crimes. Thursday arrived gray and drizzling. Marcus appeared at my door carrying 2 banker's boxes, looking haggard. The pressure was clearly getting to him. "This is everything," he said, setting the boxes on my dining room table. "Bank statements, tax returns, investment records, all of it." I opened the first box, pretending to examine the contents while knowing William's team would analyze every page. "This is quite a mess, Marcus." "I know. I made mistakes, got in over my head. But with your help..." "My help depends on complete honesty. Is this truly everything?" He met my eyes, lying with practiced ease. "Everything." I knew from Agent Walsh that he'd hidden at least 3 offshore accounts and a safety deposit box full of cash. But I simply nodded. "I'll review these over the weekend. We'll meet Monday to discuss next steps." Monday, Barnaby. "I don't have that much time. Torino's getting impatient." "Then I suggest you find a way to buy more time. I won't be rushed into anything." After he left, I called William. "How quickly can your team copy everything?" "Give us 3 hours. FBI wants originals, but we need documentation for the civil suits." "Civil suits?" "Frank Morrison and the other fathers. Once the criminal case breaks, they're filing to recover what Marcus stole. Your evidence will be crucial." As William's team worked, I sat in my study staring at Harold's business card. The trust fund still waited untouched. I'd decided to donate it all to a foundation for fraud victims, but that was tomorrow's announcement. Today was about justice. Agent Walsh called that evening. "Mr. Thompson, we've reviewed the preliminary documents. This is exactly what we needed. We're accelerating the operation to next week." "Will Sarah have to testify?" "Possibly, but as a witness, not a defendant. We have her documented as a victim from day one. Your recordings of Marcus discussing his plans to manipulate her are particularly valuable." "When will you tell her the truth about your identity?" "After the arrests. She'll be shocked, but it's better than letting her think she fell for 2 liars. That night, I couldn't sleep. The trap was baited with Marcus's own greed and desperation. He thought he was days away from accessing my fictional fortune. Instead, he was days away from federal prison. I thought about Margaret, how she would have handled this situation. She always said I was too patient, too methodical. But sometimes patience was a weapon more powerful than any immediate reaction. Marcus had knocked me down at that wedding, humiliated me for sport. Now his own actions would knock him down permanently. The game was nearly over. All that remained was the final move. Sunday morning arrived with an unexpected visitor. I was reviewing Marcus's financial documents when a black Cadillac pulled into my driveway. 2 men emerged, their expensive suits failing to hide the bulge of shoulder holsters. Vincent Torino had sent his collection team. I met them at the door before they could ring the bell, maintaining the calm demeanor that had served me throughout my engineering career. "Gentlemen, can I help you?" The taller one, built like a defensive lineman, spoke first. "Mr. Thompson, we're here about your son-in-law's obligations to Mr. Torino. Mind if we come in?" "Would it matter if I did mind?" The shorter one, who had the wiry build of a boxer, actually smiled. "We're not here to cause trouble, sir. Mr. Torino respects family. We just need to talk." I stepped aside, gesturing toward the living room. "Coffee." They exchanged glances, clearly not expecting hospitality. "That'd be nice," the boxer admitted. As I prepared coffee in my kitchen, I activated the recording app on my phone. Whatever came next needed to be documented. I served them in my good china Margaret's wedding set and settled into my armchair. "I don't believe I caught your names," I said pleasantly. "I'm Anthony," the tall one said. "This is Carlo. We handle special accounts for Mr. Torino." "Special meaning problem accounts." "Perceptive. Your son-in-law owes $2.3 million. He's been promising payment through his wife's inheritance. We understand that inheritance comes from you." I sipped my coffee slowly, organizing my thoughts. "What exactly did Marcus tell you about my supposed wealth?" Carlo pulled out a tablet, scrolling through notes. patents worth millions in aerospace technology, Swiss bank accounts, investment portfolios. He was very specific. Even showed us photos of documents, Anthony added. Very convincing. I see. I set down my cup carefully. Gentlemen, I'm going to show you something. Not because I'm intimidated, but because I respect honest business, even your kind of business. I retrieved my laptop, pulling up my actual financial records. This is my bank account. I have $87,000 in savings. Here's my pension statement from Titan Defense. I receive $4,000 monthly. My house is paid off, worth maybe $300,000 in this market. They leaned forward, studying the screen. I continued, the patents. Marcus mentioned. They belong to Titan Defense and the Department of Defense. I was an employee, not an owner. I received bonuses for my work, nothing more. So there's no Swiss account, no hidden millions. Carlo's voice carried a dangerous edge. I'm afraid Marcus has been lying to both of us. I'm a retired engineer, living on a comfortable but modest pension. Nothing more. Anthony's face darkened. That lying piece of... Excuse my language, Mr. Thompson, but this changes things. Marcus has been running cons for years. I explained, deciding honesty might save lives. He targets families he thinks have hidden wealth. My daughter was his latest mark. You got proof. I showed them William's investigation summary, watching their expressions shift from anger to disgust as they read about Marcus's previous victims. Anthony suddenly straightened. Wait, Barnaby Thompson, Titan Defense. You designed the AN/APG-68 radar system. Among other things, yes. Desert Storm 91. I was flying F-16s out of Al-Dhafra. That radar system you designed saved my squadron. We could track Iraqi MiGs long before they saw us. You served 8 years Air Force, got out as a captain. Anthony's entire demeanor had changed. Mr. Thompson, I apologize for the intrusion. This is awkward. Carlo looked confused. Tony, what are you doing? This man's work saved my life and 12 other pilots. We're done here. But Mr. Torino, will understand when I explain. Anthony stood, extending his hand. Mr. Thompson, your son-in-law's debt isn't your problem. But I think Mr. Torino would be interested in knowing he's been scammed. I shook his hand, then made a decision. Would Mr. Torino be willing to meet with me? I have a proposition that might benefit everyone. Anthony and Carlo exchanged glances. That's unusual, Carlo said slowly. Mr. Torino doesn't typically meet with civilians. Tell him I have information about Marcus's other activities that might interest him, including his connection to an ongoing federal investigation. 20 minutes later, Anthony called. Mr. Torino will see you tonight. 8 o'clock, his office at the Celestial Club. Come alone, no wires, no weapons. Understood. That evening, I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one I'd worn to Margaret's funeral. The Celestial Club occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and chrome, and carefully controlled access. Anthony met me in the lobby, escorting me through multiple security checkpoints to a private elevator. Vincent Torino's office looked like a Fortune 500 CEO's, all mahogany and leather and spectacular city views. The man himself was smaller than I'd expected, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and reading glasses that made him look more like a banker than a casino boss. Mr. Thompson, he rose, offering his hand. Anthony speaks highly of you, says you're the reason he's alive. I just designed the tools. Brave pilots like Anthony did the real work. Modest. I like that. Please sit. Anthony says you have information about Marcus Peterson. I told him everything. Marcus's cons, his lies, the FBI investigation. Torino listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back, removing his glasses. So my money's gone. Marcus never had the means to pay. I'm afraid not. He's been juggling debts using new marks to pay old obligations. And the FBI, how deep are they? Agent Walsh has been undercover as Jessica the bartender for 2 years. The arrest operation happens this week. Torino smiled thinly. Jessica. I wondered about her. Too smart to be slinging drinks. He studied me carefully. Why tell me this? You could have let me waste resources trying to collect from Marcus. Because you're a businessman, not a thug, despite your reputation. And because Marcus victimized you, just like he did my daughter. I thought you might prefer being part of the solution. Meaning? Cooperate with the FBI. Provide evidence of Marcus's fraud. In exchange, you get consideration for helping expose a con artist who's hurt dozens of families. You're suggesting I turn state's evidence. I'm suggesting you're a victim of fraud who's willing to help authorities. Big difference. Torino stood walking to the window. The city sparkled below us, lights stretching to the horizon. My grandfather started this business in 1948, ran numbers for factory workers. My father made it legitimate, or as legitimate as gambling gets. I've tried to run it like any other business. He turned back to me. But men like Marcus, they make us all look like criminals. Taking advantage of desperate people lying about money, they don't have dragging families into their schemes. So you'll consider it? I'll do more than consider it. He returned to his desk, pressing an intercom. Linda, bring me the Peterson file. Everything. A efficient-looking woman entered with a thick folder. Torino handed it to me. Loan documents, recordings of promises, bounced checks. All perfectly legal evidence of fraud. My lawyers will contact the FBI tomorrow. What about Marcus's debt? Written off. Cost of doing business. But Mr. Thompson, a word of advice. Men like Marcus, when cornered, do desperate things. Watch your back this week. I intend to. As Anthony escorted me out, he paused by the elevator. Mr. Thompson, I looked you up after our visit. You designed more than just radar systems. The missile guidance program you developed is still classified, but I know it saves civilian lives by improving accuracy. You're a good man who got caught in a bad situation. We all did, Anthony. Even Mr. Torino in his way. Can I ask you something? Why not just let the FBI handle everything? Why get involved with our side of this? I thought carefully before answering. Because justice isn't just about punishment. It's about truth. Everyone Marcus lied to deserves to know the truth, even people in your business. Anthony smiled. Margaret was a lucky woman to have you. I was the lucky one. Driving home, I felt the weight of the week ahead. The trap was no longer just mine and William's. Now it included the FBI Torino, Harold Wellington, and 6 other victimized fathers. Marcus had woven a web of lies so complex that it took all of us to untangle it. Monday's meeting would be the culmination. Marcus would arrive expecting to access my fictional fortune. Instead, he'd find federal agents, state prosecutors, and all his victims ready to testify. The chair he'd pulled out from under me at the wedding would seem like a gentle nudge compared to what waited for him. But tonight I just wanted to go home, pour a glass of Margaret's favorite whiskey, and tell her portrait about my strange day. How I'd sat with a casino boss, found common ground with enforcers, and discovered that even in the darkest corners of the city, there were still people who valued truth over lies. The ending was coming. All the pieces were in position. Marcus Peterson was about to learn that when you build your life on deception, eventually, the ground beneath you gives way. And unlike that moment at the wedding, no one would be helping him back up. 1 month after that first dinner with Marcus, I stood in the ballroom of the Riverside Country Club, the same venue where Sarah's wedding reception had taken place. But this time, I was in control of every detail. Tonight was Margaret's and my 40th wedding anniversary, or would have been if cancer hadn't stolen her from me 4 years ago. The event planning had been meticulous. 300 invitations sent, including everyone from the wedding. Marcus and Sarah received theirs with a handwritten note. Family is everything. Please come so we can start fresh. William Sterling coordinated with Agent Walsh and the FBI team. The catering staff included 6 undercover agents. The photographer was a federal prosecutor, documenting everything. Even the bartenders were law enforcement, though we'd kept the real drinks flowing to maintain authenticity. I stood near the entrance greeting guests as they arrived. Harold Wellington was among the first, accompanied by his legal team, and a documentary filmmaker he'd hired to record what he called the correction of a terrible mistake. Barnaby. Harold clasped my hand warmly. The trust documents are ready whenever you are. Though I heard you have other plans for the money. A foundation for fraud victims in Margaret's name. She always believed in helping those who couldn't help themselves. She'd be proud of what you're doing tonight. Frank Morrison arrived next, along with 5 other fathers whose daughters had been Marcus's victims. We'd planned this like a military operation, each man knowing his role. They mingled naturally with the crowd waiting for the signal. Vincent Torino made a surprising appearance, dressed elegantly, and accompanied by Anthony. "Mr. Thompson," he said quietly, "my lawyers filed everything with the FBI yesterday. Whatever happens tonight, I'm simply another invited guest who happens to have business documentation in his car. I appreciate your discretion, Mr. Torino." "Vincent, please. We're all victims of Mr. Peterson's deceptions." At 7:30, Sarah arrived. She looked beautiful, but tired, the past month's stress evident, despite her careful makeup. She hugged me tightly. "Daddy, are you sure about this? Marcus has been manic all week, talking about fresh starts and investment opportunities." "Trust me, sweetheart. After tonight, you'll be free of him." "What do you mean?" "Just stay close to Emma when things begin. She knows what to do." Marcus entered 10 minutes later, practically vibrating with anticipation. He'd dressed in his most expensive suit, clearly expecting this to be his coronation, as the heir to my fictional fortune. He approached me with that practiced smile, arms spread for an embrace I didn't return. "Barnaby, what a wonderful way to honor Margaret's memory. I'm sure she's smiling down on us." "I'm certain she's watching." I agreed, knowing Margaret would have appreciated the irony. As guests enjoyed cocktails and appetizers, I noticed Marcus working the room like a politician, dropping hints about his consulting firm and upcoming expansions. He'd already approached 3 elderly engineers, laying groundwork for future cons he'd never execute. At 8 sharp, I moved to the small stage where a jazz quartet had been playing. The musicians stopped as I approached the microphone, and conversation gradually died. "Thank you all for coming." I began my voice carrying clearly through the sound system William's team had enhanced. 40 years ago, Margaret Anderson agreed to marry a young engineer with big dreams and empty pockets. She stood by me through military service career changes and more late nights at the lab than I can count. Murmurs of sympathy rippled through the crowd. I continued. "Margaret passed 4 years ago, but she taught me something valuable before she left. She said the best way to honor someone's memory isn't through mourning, but through action, through truth, through justice." Marcus shifted uncomfortably near the bar. He sensed something, but couldn't identify the threat. "Tonight, I want to share some truths with you all. But first, a video tribute to my late wife." The lights dimmed as a projection screen descended. What followed was 10 minutes of carefully edited footage. It began with photos of Margaret and me. Through the years, our life together, her charity work. The audience smiled and sighed at appropriate moments. Then the tone shifted. "But Margaret also taught me about standing up to bullies." My recorded voice narrated as footage from Sarah's wedding appeared. The chair incident played in slow motion, Marcus's cruel smile crystal clear as I hit the ground. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. "She taught me that lies have consequences." The narration continued. Now the screen showed screenshots of Marcus's texts with Jessica, his searches for my patents, his detailed con plans. Each image stayed up long enough to read, long enough to understand. And she taught me that justice, while sometimes delayed, should never be denied. The screen filled with financial documents, loan applications with forged signatures, bank statements showing embezzled funds, photos of Marcus with different women at different weddings, all daughters of engineers. The other fathers in the room stood straighter, their presence suddenly making sense to observant guests. The lights came back up. Marcus stood frozen, his face cycling through shock, rage, and fear as he realized the trap's scope. He started toward the exit, but Anthony stepped smoothly into his path. "Going somewhere?" Anthony asked pleasantly. I returned to the microphone. "Harold, would you like to say something?" Harold Wellington took the stage, his presence commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, the man you know as Marcus Wellington is not my son. He's a con artist who's used my family name to defraud innocent people. As of tonight, he has no connection to Wellington Industries or my family." Harold pulled out legal documents. "These are cease and desist orders, injunctions, and formal notices of identity theft charges. Mr. Peterson, you're no longer authorized to use the Wellington name in any capacity." Marcus tried another exit, but Frank Morrison blocked that path. "Remember my daughter Patricia?" Frank asked quietly. "You nearly destroyed her. But she's here tonight, ready to testify about your crimes." One by one, the other fathers positioned themselves at strategic points. The trap was visible now, inescapable. Marcus's head swiveled desperately, looking for any escape route. Sarah stepped forward, Emma at her side. "Marcus," she said, her voice steady, despite visible trembling. "Emma has something for you." Emma handed him a thick envelope. "Divorce papers, already filed. The restraining order is permanent. And that prenuptial agreement you thought was so clever, your fraud voids it completely." "You can't do this," Marcus sputtered. "Barnaby, tell them about the money, the Swiss accounts." I smiled sadly. "What Swiss accounts?" "Marcus, you mean the fictional documents I left for you to find. The ones you photographed and showed to Mr. Torino as collateral for more loans." Vincent Torino stood smoothly. "About that, Mr. Peterson. Fraud voids our agreement. My lawyers will be in touch about criminal charges." "This is entrapment!" Marcus shouted. "You set me up!" "No," a clear voice said from the back. Agent Jennifer Walsh walked forward, her bartender persona, replaced by federal authority. "You set yourself up. 2 years of recorded conversations documented fraud conspiracy to commit wire fraud across state lines. You did this to yourself." She showed her FBI badge to the gasping crowd. "Marcus Peterson, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." As Agent Walsh read Marcus his rights, other agents materialized from the catering staff, the band, even some apparent guests. The arrest was swift, professional, and thorough. Marcus's last view of the ballroom showed all his victims standing together, united in their pursuit of justice. But I wasn't finished. As agents led Marcus toward the exit, I called out, "Marcus, one last thing." He turned, hatred burning in his eyes. "At the wedding, you said my place was on the floor. You were wrong. My place is standing with my family, my friends, and my principles. Your place, that's for the justice system to decide. But I suspect you'll have plenty of time to think about it." The doors closed behind him. The room erupted in conversations, accusations, and no small amount of satisfaction from those who'd witnessed his cruelty at the wedding. Harold took the microphone again. "Ladies and gentlemen, I know this has been shocking, but I want you to witness something else tonight." He turned to me. "Barnaby Thompson, the trust fund I mentioned at the wedding, is real and waiting. $78 million. It's yours with my eternal gratitude." I joined him on stage. "Thank you, Harold, but I've already made arrangements. The entire sum will establish the Margaret Thompson Foundation for Fraud Victims. Sarah will serve as executive director, helping families recover from con artists like Marcus." Sarah gasped, tears streaming down her face. The crowd applauded, some wiping their own eyes. Vincent Torino approached the stage. "Mr. Thompson, I'd like to make a donation to that foundation. $5 million. Clean money." He added with a slight smile. "From legitimate gaming revenues." The evening transformed from a sting operation into something unexpected, a celebration of justice and community. The jazz quartet resumed playing. People who'd laughed at my fall now approached with apologies and admiration. The country club manager offered to host the foundation's first fundraiser free of charge. Frank Morrison found me during a quiet moment. "Patricia's here tonight. She wanted to thank you personally." A young woman approached nervously, her resemblance to Frank clear. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Patricia Morrison Chen. I wanted you to know what this means. For 2 years, I blamed myself for not seeing through Marcus. Tonight, watching him get arrested, seeing all of us together, I can finally let go of that guilt. That's all any of us wanted," I told her. "To see the truth revealed and justice served." As the evening wound down, William Sterling pulled me aside. "The FBI says this is just the beginning. Marcus's arrest will lead to a dozen other cases. You've started something important here." "Margaret started it," I corrected. "She always said that good people need to stand together against those who would exploit kindness. I just finally listened." Sarah found me on the terrace where I'd stepped for a moment of quiet. "Daddy, I don't know what to say. You planned all this. The investigation, the FBI, everything. With a lot of help. William Sterling, Harold, the other fathers, even Mr. Torino. Marcus created so many victims that we became an army against him. The foundation. Mom would have loved that. She would have loved seeing you run it. You have her compassion and my stubbornness. Perfect combination for helping fraud victims." We stood together looking out at the city lights. Inside, the party continued, transformed from a trap into a triumph. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and testimonies and the long process of justice. But tonight, we'd won something important. "No more chair pulling," Sarah said quietly. "No more chair pulling." I agreed. "From now on, we make sure everyone has a seat at the table, especially those who've been knocked down by people like Marcus." The November air was cool, but I felt warm. Margaret's anniversary had become something more than remembrance. It had become redemption, not just for me or Sarah, but for everyone Marcus had hurt. That was better than any revenge, turning pain into purpose, victims into victors. Marcus would spend the night in federal custody, the first of many nights away from the luxury he'd stolen from others. But we'd spend it surrounded by truth, justice, and the knowledge that sometimes good people working together could defeat those who prey on trust. The chair had been pulled out from under me once, but I'd gotten back up, and in doing so helped others stand as well. That was Margaret's true legacy, and the greatest gift I could give on our anniversary. The federal courthouse in downtown San Francisco buzzed with activity on a crisp December morning. 2 months had passed since the anniversary sting, and today, Marcus Peterson would learn his fate. The courtroom gallery was packed with his victims, journalists, and curious observers who'd followed the case through endless media coverage. I sat in the front row with Sarah, who'd thrown herself into establishing the Margaret Thompson Foundation with remarkable energy. She'd already helped 3 families recover assets from other con artists inspired by our case. Harold Wellington sat beside us, having become an unexpected friend through this ordeal. Marcus entered in an orange jumpsuit, and shackles a far cry from his designer suits. The past 2 months in federal custody had stripped away his polish. His attorney, a public defender, after his assets were frozen, looked resigned to the inevitable. Judge Catherine Martinez, known for her no-nonsense approach to financial crimes, reviewed the charges. "Mr. Peterson, you stand convicted of 14 counts of wire fraud, 6 counts of identity theft, 3 counts of money laundering and conspiracy to commit fraud." The jury's verdict was unanimous. Marcus kept his eyes down as she continued. "I've reviewed over 200 pages of victim impact statements. The financial damage exceeds $12 million. But the emotional damage, the destruction of trust, the manipulation of families, that's immeasurable." She looked directly at Marcus. "You targeted vulnerable people with surgical precision. Widowers grieving their wives, fathers wanting to provide for their daughters. You studied their pain and weaponized it for profit. This wasn't desperation or addiction. This was cruelty as a business model. Agent Walsh, now publicly acknowledged as the lead investigator, had testified during the trial about the scope of Marcus's crimes. Her 2 years undercover had revealed connections to a network of con artists, all of whom were being prosecuted based on evidence from Marcus's records. "Does the defendant wish to make a statement before sentencing?" Judge Martinez asked. Marcus stood slowly, his attorney steadying him. For the first time since his arrest, he looked at the gallery, his eyes finding mine. I want to apologize." He began, his voice lacking its usual smooth confidence. "Especially to Barnaby Thompson. Sir, what I did at your daughter's wedding was unforgivable. Not just the chair, but everything. You trusted me with your daughter, and I saw only dollar signs." He turned to Sarah. "I'm sorry. You deserved real love, not the performance I gave. You're brilliant and kind, and I turned those qualities into vulnerabilities to exploit." The apology continued, addressing Harold, the other fathers, even Vincent Torino, who'd attended every day of the trial. Whether genuine or strategic, Marcus acknowledged each victim by name, detailing his deceptions. "I've had 2 months to think," Marcus concluded, "to realize that I had skills that could have built something real. Instead, I chose destruction. I can't undo that, but I can promise that if I ever get the chance, I'll try to make amends." Judge Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Peterson, words are your weapon of choice. The court notes your apology, but will judge you by actions, not speeches." She lifted her gavel. "Marcus Peterson, this court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You're ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, though the court acknowledges your current inability to do so. Any future earnings will go toward this debt." The gavel fell with finality. 25 years. Marcus would be in his 60s when released, his prime con artist years behind him. As marshals prepared to lead him away, he looked back once more, meeting my eyes. I saw something there, perhaps genuine regret, perhaps just another performance. With Marcus, you never really knew. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded us. Sarah handled them with growing confidence, discussing the foundation's mission. Harold announced Wellington Industries would donate $1 million annually to support fraud victims. Even Vincent Torino, maintaining his legitimate businessman persona, pledged ongoing support. Frank Morrison shook my hand warmly. "Patricia sends her regards. She's pregnant with her second child, happy in her real marriage. That's the best revenge against Marcus, living well, despite what he did." That evening, we held a celebration at my house. Not a victory party Margaret would have disapproved of gloating, but a gathering of people who'd found strength in shared adversity. William Sterling raised a toast. "To Barnaby Thompson, who showed us that patience and planning beat rage and revenge every time." "To all of us," I corrected, "and to those who couldn't be here, especially Margaret, who believed justice would prevail if good people stood together." As the evening progressed, I found myself on the back porch with Harold. We'd developed an easy friendship, bonded by the strange circumstances of Marcus's deception. "You could have kept the trust fund," Harold observed. $78 million. Most people wouldn't have donated at all." "Most people don't have what I have," I replied. "A daughter I'm proud of, friends who stood by me, and memories of a marriage built on real love, not manipulation." Marcus never understood that wealth isn't measured in dollars. "Speaking of your daughter, she's remarkable. The foundation's already helping dozens of families. Margaret would be proud." "She would, though she'd probably say I took too long to act." Harold laughed. "The methodical engineer." "But it worked. Marcus's conviction will deter others. The publicity has made people more aware of these schemes. You've saved future victims, not just helped past ones." Sarah joined us, holding a folder. "Daddy, I wanted to show you something. The foundation received an unusual donation today." She handed me a check for $50,000. The donor's name made me blink in surprise. Jessica Martinez, Marcus's supposed mistress, whose undercover work as Agent Walsh had been crucial to his conviction. Her note says the FBI authorized her to donate the salary she earned while undercover at Torino's club. She wants it to help Marcus's victims. I studied the check, thinking about the strange paths justice takes. An FBI agent posing as a bartender, a casino owner becoming a philanthropist, a humiliated father turning pain into purpose. None of it followed a straight line, but it all led here. "Daddy," Sarah said softly, "I've been thinking about forgiveness. Not forgetting, not excusing, but letting go of the anger. Think I'll ever get there with Marcus?" I considered my answer carefully. Forgiveness isn't for him, sweetheart. It's for you. When you're ready, you'll know. Until then, focus on the good you're doing. That matters more than the hurt he caused. As the gathering wound down, each guest stopped to share a word or memory. The engineer whose daughter Marcus had targeted in Portland, the teacher from Sacramento, the nurse from Denver, all connected by a con man's greed, now bonded by survival and justice. Vincent Torino was among the last to leave. "Mr. Thompson, I want you to know something. My organization has implemented new verification procedures for large loans. What happened with Marcus won't happen again. You've made us better businessmen." "Legitimate businessmen?" I asked with a slight smile. "As legitimate as gambling gets," he replied. "But more careful about who we trust. That's your influence." After everyone left, I sat in my study, looking at Margaret's portrait. The investigation documents were filed away. The trial transcripts would go to the Foundation for educational purposes. The photos from that awful wedding reception had been destroyed. No need to preserve that humiliation. But I kept one thing: Harold's business card from that chaotic reception, the one he'd handed me after my fall. It reminded me that sometimes grace comes from unexpected sources, that humiliation can transform into honor. The phone rang, Sarah calling from her apartment. "Daddy, I just wanted to say thank you. Not just for catching Marcus, but for showing me how to respond to injustice. With patience, planning, and purpose. That's Mom's legacy through you." "It's your legacy now, sweetheart. The foundation will help families for generations. Marcus knocked us down, but look how high we've risen." After we hung up, I poured a small glass of Margaret's favorite whiskey, a ritual I'd maintained since her passing. I raised it to her portrait. "We did it, my love. Turned pain into purpose, just like you always said. Marcus is facing justice. Sarah's found her calling, and your name will help victims for years to come. Not bad for an old engineer who got knocked on his rear at his daughter's wedding." The house was quiet, but not empty. It was full of purpose, of justice served, of a future where fewer people would suffer what we'd endured. Marcus had thought my place was on the floor. He was wrong. My place was here in the life Margaret and I built, surrounded by truth and love and the knowledge that standing up for what's right matters. The chair had been pulled away, but I'd gotten back up. More importantly, I'd helped ensure others wouldn't be knocked down the same way. That was better than any revenge, better than any money. That was Margaret's true gift, teaching me that the best response to cruelty isn't more cruelty. It's creating a world where cruelty has consequences. 25 years. Marcus would have plenty of time to think about that. But I had better things to do with my time. A daughter to support, a foundation to guide, and a life to live that honored Margaret's memory, not through mourning, but through action. The story that began with humiliation had ended with hope, and that I knew was exactly how Margaret would have written it. Justice and redemption. I said to the quiet room. It just took a while to get there. If you've ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted, remember that your response defines you more than their actions. How we rise after being knocked down shows our true character. What would you have done in Barnaby's situation? Would you have sought immediate revenge or played the long game? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about justice, redemption, and the triumph of patience over impulse. Share this with anyone who needs reminding that truth eventually prevails. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you always have the strength to get back up when life knocks you down, and the wisdom to know that the best revenge is a life well lived. Until next time, remember dignity isn't about never falling, it's about how you rise.